Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I have a small receptacle of frozen fruit, and today we're going to learn how to make a Vansire type beat inside of FL Studio. Let's go. So honestly, Vansire is really one of the first indie type bands that I really started listening to, so I'm pretty excited about this one. If you're watching this video and you haven't already heard of Vansire, I definitely recommend you go check them out. Their style is definitely leaning more towards the indie pop territory, although they do have some newer stuff that's a lot more acoustic and folky sounding. The type of beat that we're going to make in this one here today, I like to think of it more like dancey indie synth pop. Kinda. For this one today, you're really not going to need much besides FL Studio and some samples. If you have a bass and can play it, that'd be really good, but not necessary. You can always use plugins to emulate a bass guitar. If you have an electric guitar and can play it, that would be great, but also not necessary. They do have a lot of tracks that don't really use much guitar at all. And usually in these videos, I'll record drums, but today we're not going to need them because we're just going to be using samples. Alright, so getting started here, we're obviously going to hop into FL Studio, and we're going to pull in a few drum sounds. Kick, snare, hi-hat, percussion, and maybe a few toms. And we want to go for drums that are kind of a mix of like a house, dancey feel, but also indie as well. My vintage kit and my super cool indie drum pack both have some great sounds in there that you can use for this. I'll link those down in the description below, but you can also just search up like indie rock, indie pop drum kit and probably find something as well. But once you have your sounds pulled in, you can go and you can right click on the kick drum and then do fill each 4 steps. And now this is called a 4 on the floor pattern. And now for the snare drum, we're just going to put it on the 2 and the 4. So right here and right here. Now at this point, if you want to, you can add in a hi-hat, an open hat, or a closed hat. A very common thing you'll hear with dance music is putting the open hat on the off beats, so like this. But I'm actually not going to be using hi-hats for this one because instead I'm going to use a shaker. So what we can do now with this drum pattern is start building some percussive stuff around that kick and snare. So I have this little hand drum sample or whatever this is. We're just going to put this in a couple different places like this. You can add some more percussion and stuff if you want to, but for this beat, I'm going to add a lot of different melodic layers, so I don't really want to overcrowd the drums too much. But I do have some toms and a clap sample, and we're just going to use these at the end of a 4-bar drum loop as kind of a little fill type thing. So with the claps, you can just do something like this. It'll be like a ch-ch kind of thing. And with the toms, I have one that's higher up and one that's lower, and we're just going to do a little fill with those in order. That sounds pretty cool, and it transitions very well back into the beginning. You can also go into the piano roll for any one of these, right click, piano roll, and then you can hit Alt plus R to randomize the velocities. And you can also go in and hold down Alt and then ever so slightly adjust the start times of some of these notes so they're not like perfectly on the line. All right, so that's pretty much it as far as the drum pattern goes. Very, very simple drums. Now we're gonna start adding some melodic components in there. And for this, you can pretty much grab any synth plugin that you've got. Some sort of plugin that can emulate like Juno synths and some of those other old vintage synthesizers would be nice. But probably most synth plugins that you've got are gonna do the job just fine. Vansire, they just use actual real hardware synthesizers, so if you've got them, definitely feel free to use them, but I do not. So my personal plugin of choice is Analog Lab. I just like all the vintage synth emulations they've got in there, and there's tons and tons of great sounds. First thing you want to look for is some sort of synth pad. I pulled up this one right here. It's called Welcome to the 80s. It's one of their Juno 6 emulation presets. Kind of destroying my CPU, but the chords that you want to go for here for this song are going to be 7th chords, of course. 7th chords are kind of just like the staple of indie music, and you want this chord progression to have kind of a light and uplifting feel to it, but you don't want it to be like too overly happy or anything. So I came up with this progression right here. And I basically just applied those same humanizing principles that I showed you guys on the drum pattern, just randomizing the velocities and then randomizing the start times as well. So this is kind of optional, but once I have a 4-bar chord progression, I like to copy that over, that same thing, and then just add a couple little melody notes in there to kind of keep it fresh so it's not just the same thing looping for 4 bars. Just one of those subtle little things that's going to make your melody and your progression sound a lot better. So now what you can do is take that chord progression and just add another layer or two, just a different synth sound, but the same exact progression. I'm just using another preset from Analog Lab. This one is called Honky Tonky. Honky Tonky. But I've taken it and I've turned the brightness and the timbre and stuff all the way down. And this is just a nice little layer that's going to beef up that other sound we added. So at this point, you can kind of just get creative with whatever synth sounds you want to add. You can just add some nice little like accenting things in there. I'm going to add like a little arpeggio in there. Just kind of go wild with it and just do whatever feels right. The thing about Vansire tracks is that on a lot of them, you can tell they're just messing around with the synths and just experimenting and coming up with cool sounds. So you should definitely be doing the same as well. But you already know the drill. I'm going to open up Analog Lab once again, and I'm going to see if I can grab some sort of arpeggio sound. So I found this little plucked keys sound. Definitely not an arpeggio, but we can make it into an arpeggio. We can basically just take this sound and look at the chords that we already have. Just follow the notes like this, copy it over a couple times, do the same thing with this chord right here, and just like that, now we have a little arpeggio going on. So at this point, I have added quite a few synth sounds, but I'm going to add one more, and this time it's not going to be with Analog Lab. I'm going to open up Serum, and I'm actually going to use one of my own presets that I made from my completely free Serum sound bank. Check out this video right here. This right here is the Whoa lead. I bet you can't guess why it's called that. I feel like this is just an absolutely perfect Vansire synth sound. It sounds a lot like the synth that they used on Metamodernity. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I came up with this little melody right here. I think it sounds really cool. It does sound a lot like Long Drive Back, but it's got its own vibe to it. But now, at this point, I think we're going to move on to bass guitar. So when it comes to these bass lines, we definitely want to be getting relatively funky with it. If you don't have a bass guitar, a lot of this is still going to apply to programming bass too. One common method for getting funky with it is doing octaves. So if you take anywhere on the bass, go over 2 frets and down 2 strings, that's the same note but an octave higher. So when you're doing your bass line, just add a couple of those in there. You want to add some little transition notes as well. That's one thing that Vansire does really well with their bass. All of their bass lines seem to just flow so well together. So I'm going to do something along the lines of this. See where I just kind of didn't really stop moving my fingers the whole time. There's always some sort of little transition or slide thing going on, but I'm still generally following the root notes of the chords here, which were F sharp, F, G sharp, F sharp, F, I think. I'm also going to get a little bit of this bad boy in there, electric guitar. Remember, I did say guitar is not necessary, but it is welcomed if you can play guitar. So let's say, hypothetically, we wanted to get a little extra funky with it. A very funky, disco, dancey kind of thing to do on guitar is playing chords on just these bottom 3 strings. So like something like... So while I've got the guitar out and about, I might as well record a couple other things. One of those is going to be a double-tracked strum. I'm pretty much just going to do one strum of each of the chords. I'm also going to get a little fancy with it and record just like an 8-bar guitar solo, just because I'm in the mood for a little solo, and sometimes Vansire does have some nice guitar solos on their tracks. So let's do that, shall we? Along those lines, maybe, right? Now we're gonna add some shaker up in there. I'm gonna play it like this too. Just kidding, no funny business. Nothing funny about this channel here. This is a strictly business channel. We're all about our business. We're all about our business around here. Who's gonna tell me I'm not the best gosh darn shaker player on YouTube? The best gosh darn shaker player you've ever seen? You gonna tell me that? No, you're not. All right, so at this point, we've recorded almost everything that we need, but there is one more thing that I want to record, and that is piano. If you don't have a piano, don't even freaking worry about it, dude, because there's plenty of piano plugins out there that you can use. However, there's literally a grand piano 15 feet from my room, so I'm just gonna record that. Alright, so at this point, we pretty much have everything we need up in there. The rest of our work here is just going to be mixing and laying out the beat, which I'm not going to go too deep into because this video is about the actual beat making process. A few pretty generalized tips when it comes to laying out your beats. The main thing is that you want to make sure the track doesn't get repetitive throughout the whole thing. You do this by taking out and putting in certain instruments in different places. This is why I like to record a lot of synth layers and guitar layers and things like that, because it allows you the freedom to kind of lay out the beat in whatever way you want and create a whole lot of different unique sections. Also, you guys saw me record the slower shaker part and then the fast shaker part as well. The fast part is going to be during the chorus, and the slower part is going to be during the verses or during the little build-ups and things like that. Make sure, keep your tracks fresh. Don't let them get boring throughout the whole thing. As far as mixing goes, any guitar that I ever record is going to have CLA guitars on it. I just really like the tone that that plugin provides. And for this track, I'm actually going to take all the drum samples, route them to a bus, and then on that bus, I'm going to put DBX 160, which is a great drum compressor. I have it linked in the description below if you want to check it out. When you're using drum samples, there's a tendency for all of them to sound a little bit disjointed. So when you put one nice little compressor on everything, it makes it sound a little bit more cohesive. But yeah, so I think other than that, that is pretty much going to do it for me in this one here today. So yeah, thank you all for tuning into this one here today. I hope you're able to learn something or other from this video. Vansire is definitely one of my favorite indie bands out there, and I think I was hopefully able to do them justice with this beat. But nonetheless, hope you guys have an amazing day. Stay safe out there, make some cool music, and I will see you all next time.